Welcome to the Building in Public podcast on a lovely February 8th, 2024. We have a new member to our lovely family, Z, and would love to kick it off with him giving an intro and what he's up to.
Hey, yeah, nice to be here. First time, all out here. It's interesting. I've been like kind of jumping feet first directly into aerospace and finding companies because I have a really good network of kind of different types of people, and I learn things quite fast. It's actually funny. I was in Clubhouse back when it was like cool, and someone was asking like, "What's your superpower?" And I don't know what to do with that question because I'm like, I don't know. Like, no, what is it? I'm like, I can learn anything really, really fast. And they're like, wait, that's genius. Like, that means everything is your superpower. I was like, sure, I guess. Sounds good. But it's true, I guess. It's kind of is true. But I've been kind of leveraging, as they call it, the network that I have and meeting a lot of people in a lot of spaces. And I have like, vague knowledge or a decent amount of terminology, how things work. And it's been very cool to hear founders talk about what they're creating. And noticing how quickly I can boil it down and hand it right back because they'll go off on like a spiel, right? 5-7 minutes. They'll be like, wait, just to clarify, it's XYZ. They're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, as long as I understood it. It's interesting to see how it helps them, it helps me. It brings the whole thing kind of forward to very quickly get to what something is, and then they can kind of go really nerdy into the details, which is like, it's very important. And I can ask like whacked out questions that are very important. It's kind of like, wait, but you sure about this? And they're like, yes, and here's why. And the details that really gets down to. I guess in future podcasts, I can probably go into depth on that. I add more companies to the list of people that I've met. Right now, we're at like 10 or 12 or something like that. And then there's that whole flow afterwards, which is interesting to have to keep up with. Who I was in touch with, which we're working out those details right now, right? Who we were in touch with, what it was about. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's pretty awesome.
Very cool. And can you tell us a little bit more about your history and how you ended up here?
Yeah, sure. It's funny. My background, I actually started off wanting to be a doctor. And I was like halfway through the process, and I figured that I should probably look at what that looks like from the inside. So I emailed the head of a program in Israel, who's the head of pediatric oncology. And I said, hey, can I intern at you? And he's like, no. I was like, why not? He's like, fine, come down, see what it's like. And we'll see if I like you. And so I showed up, and he's like, yeah, it's cool. You can totally intern. And I spent 10 months like doing physicals, like full on checkups. So it took about 2 months till he like turned to me. He's like, do the checkup. And I said, I am not qualified and I'm not trained. He's like, I didn't ask you if you are. You've been watching me for 2 months. I'll make sure you don't do anything stupid. Don't worry about it. And it was really, really hands-on experience. And at the end of it, he sat me down and he's like, listen, it looks like you want to do new things. You want to cause change. Just giving you a heads up. But you can't do that in this industry. And it really messed with me. He quit actually his position 2 months after that or something like that. He was apparently also disillusioned. It pushed me into like the startup world. I first ended up starting a company that was about kind of data, combining disparate data sets and creating new pharmaceuticals. Where that market's a mess. The cost and time of bringing drugs to market, it's a mess. So yeah, I was working on that.
Very cool. And then with when you went through Techstars, did you go through with that company or did you go through with Column?
So I went through it with Column. So it's funny, that company actually led me to build Column. I realized that the best way to look at disparate data sets is to look at the creators behind it and what the credentials of that person is. And not just credentials in the sense of like, what's your PhD? Credentials in the sense of what has your peer group said about you over time? What have your interactions been like? Have your statements been beneficial? And I realized that that's really the key to the whole thing. To better understand people is how they've communicated and what value they've brought to others. And that's how Column was born, which is a very much blockchain-based identity protocol. Blockchain-based simply to keep things really clean, to make sure it's not in our control, but it's pretty holistic, I guess you'd call it. And that brought us to Techstars. They loved the concept, and it was also a blockchain-focused cohort. So they brought us in for that.
Very cool. And then for the listeners, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with Techstars as it's one of the conglomerates in the space. But can you give us a little TLDR of who they are and what they do?
Sure. So people have probably heard of Y Combinator, which is one of the famous ones, or 500 startups. So basically, the three famous accelerators that exist that actually kind of give benefit are Y Combinator, Techstars, and 500 startups. And prior to my joining, I kind of assumed the accelerator was just you burn 4 months, they give you some capital, and you get like the stamp you can put on your website. Look, we're a part of Techstars. It's actually really good. They teach you things that you couldn't have really understood prior to being really slammed hard with it.
Mm.
Branding, how to talk to people, how to build a deck. It also, the stamp that it gives you is a big deal. It's kind of like, oh, look, I graduated Harvard. And people are like, oh, you cool, let's talk about it. And I've had that already. People are like, oh, you're Techstars alum, let's talk. Like there's sort of an automatic trust that's sort of built in there. Um, yeah, fantastic experience. They're good people. They know what they're talking about. It's interesting. Accelerators are an interesting business model, definitely. But in general, an accelerator that actually offers a benefit to its cohorts, whether that's because the branding's really good, or it's because their network is filled with people that are kind of awesome. There definitely is like a quote unquote value add that exists there.
Very cool. Thank you for that. I know we're the new kids on the block in the venture space as a whole, in the startup space as a whole. But I don't know if we've talked about the fact that part of our go-to-market strategy is to offer a sponsored aerospace accelerator. We're going to test out the model, and we're working on the curriculum and bringing that same kind of value together and that same kind of community together. So there's going to be a lot of learnings there. We're trying to culminate like a pretty solid network of resources. But if there was one thing that you could say was a differentiating factor and like the most it made sense for you outside of like the brand and the network, which I think are two major things that you just spoke to, like what's something really unique that you would love to see if you were to go through an accelerator again and be like, wow, I've this is really differentiating.
I would repeat something that Techstars did, which is one of the days is called, I don't remember what they call it. It's maybe called Pitch Day. And you're not really expecting anything from it other than you sit in a room and altogether 25 people, like one at a time, come to you for like 10 minutes at a time. And you got to tell them what you're doing. And you're not trying necessarily to get anything out of them because you have very little background as to who they are, whether they're branding type people, whether they're investors. It's a mix. And you got to pitch it to them. And it's really useful because there's various different types of people, right? But I had one of the mentors came in and she was like, she was the first one I met, and she's like, "What the hell is your story?" And I was like, I tried to like tell my story, and I realized like, oh, I suck at that, and I had to like in the interim of her leaving to the 3 minutes till the next one came in, like get my story down, and that like
Mm,
kind of slap in the face. It was like done. I had my story down for everyone that showed up, and it was like just everyone that came through. I was actually able to talk to very directly. I think that is very incredible. That's sort of like real feet to the fire. Tell it and see who actually picks it up. I think it's really useful. It's something that's unique. I've never seen done, and it's kind of like, whoa, okay, let's do that.
very cool. I'm going blurry, by the way. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. I know we only had Z on for a few minutes today because he's got to drop and do other cool stuff out in the world. But thanks so much for hopping on. Feel free to stick around and hang out as long as you can or you'd like to. Um, but Z will definitely be on future podcasts as
Yeah,
well as we're building this thing.
yeah. I got to roll because I got a meeting with another potential portco. But yeah, I'll be on the next one for sure.
Cool. Appreciate you, brother.
All right, talk to you soon.
Awesome.
And that is
So
the life of what we do. We make meetings with portfolio companies. We do our due diligence, and we see what's exciting out in the world. So expect more frequent guests to come in and out in future episodes.
yeah, and you'll be hearing a bit more from Z as well. He's
a rock star here.
yeah, he's crushing it. He's really helping build this from the ground up. Speaking of building from the ground up, we got our normal cast. So got Carolina and Nicole here as well. But we've all been pretty busy over this past week. You guys want to share a bit about what you're doing and what you're excited about?
I'll go. This is Nicole speaking, if you're only listening to audio. So we're working on getting out our website this week, building that out in Notion, learning how, the give and takes of hosting on different platforms, because building out a website on something that's like easy and accessible comes with limitations. So we're learning how to best display our information on there. And yeah, I'm excited. As soon as that's done, we're all in.
All systems go.
Yeah. And that's exciting. We'll get that done this week.
So a couple things that are waiting on that. We have a few individuals that I spoke with at a recent conference I went to called SpaceCom. It's all things aerospace, or all things space, I should say. We met some companies out there that are in various aspects of the space, be it manufacturing or mission readiness or cleaning up the debris, the space debris. There was a handful of companies we spoke to that are actually interested in partaking in the sponsored accelerator, either as partners or sponsors. So part of the reason that we're getting this site together is to get it out to them so they could see more about who we are, what we're doing, understand what this upcoming sponsored aerospace accelerator is going to be all about, and then also understand the breakdown of those sponsorship tiers as well. So yeah, looking forward to it. I don't know, so much has been happening. Chris and I had an interesting conversation this morning. It was a follow-up conversation with a couple people from National Lab. You want to share a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Without giving away any names, because we want to respect the privacy of any of the potential partners or participants that work with us until we get affirmative approvals. And for anyone listening, thinking of starting their own venture or podcast or such, get permission, right? This is not a world where you do the ask for forgiveness because you burn a bridge and people start burning other bridges for you and warning others not to let you cross. So no corporate shenanigans, please, as we work through this. But we met with two great individuals at ISS National Lab who were walking us through the process of getting, like, how to submit proposals to get things into space, how to form actual partnerships, what the costs for certain things were, and like where they might fit in or we might fit in to a pipeline, and just as importantly, how to reach out to folks in the space of space. So for anyone that has an inkling of it, getting things into space is expensive. It is not a trivial thing, especially the International Space Station, which is a venture of multiple governments. Getting stuff onto rockets is expensive. Sending it up is expensive. We're talking about thousands of dollars per gram. Basically, it's the price of gold is how much something in dry mass it takes to get up. You have to do all of your due diligence. There's like 70 pages of paperwork you have to do. Maybe you can automate that nowadays, but it is not trivial, and you don't get to do willy-nilly things with the space station. Like, I want to go test this product that has already been tested. They want novel things. So if there's a conflict of production and science, or redundancy, it is not worthwhile, because every hour of astronaut time, and the astronauts are the workers doing things in space. They are the labor, and every astronaut is roughly $100,000 per labor hour.
$130,000 per labor hour.
Roughly, yeah. Not
Roughly.
including inflation, as of 2024. So being mindful of the impact that the space station has on society. Many innovations and discoveries happen up in space, and so far only up in space, or have led to things that have required for space that have improved our lives down here. Something as simple as like memory foam mattresses, which now you get things like better shoes from like, and better mattresses or footwear, or even the love sack, which is very popular. But that's just a beanbag full of cut up memory foam cubes. So there's that. Anything else I'm missing, Andrew? Because like the conversation went fast, and we have a lot of them.
Yeah, it did, and we have. I guess the few things that we could share. We're going to send out a list to a bunch of the companies that we met and the companies in our pipeline as well, and let them know that there's an open application for like March 4th. This will probably come out and be way too close to that timeline if you're a space company and you're scrambling, but hopefully if it does come out before then and you're listening to this, definitely go to apply. But they have a 3-step application process. They do look on the commercialization aspects, which actually aligns with our first stage, our first gate for the venture studio model as well, like making sure the problem space is a problem space worth solving, and also understanding like the monetizability and the commercializability of an idea or a solution of the problem space. And then they walk you through that process. And once they validate that you pass through the criteria, then you can, and you go through their first step, then you get potential opportunity for being awarded, where you get paired up with their implementation partners, the ISS National Lab Ops team and the NASA Ops team. They walk you through that. And then the final like process and outcome, once you make it even through the third step, is they'll actually award you for the innovation. They cover up mass and down mass and astronaut time for the venture. So huge opportunity for enabling innovation in space. And they'll also cover part of the implementation partner fee. So they do expect you to have some skin in the game in working with their implementation partners. Obviously, it's a commercial venture in that relationship, but they'll cover some of it, which is pretty cool. And the more that you can cover as a company, the more likely, not more likely, but the more it shows that you are invested in your own venture and want to make this thing happen. It goes a long way with their team. But we have an individual that facilitates these engagements and can help through the process. He focuses on, where is his lineup? Small business mentality, startups, ops processes, funding, pitching, events, marketing, state of the industry, what's hot, what's not when it comes to getting things in space. So it's incredible that we have him on board and excited about what we're doing and contributing to our ecosystem that we're building here. But also today we met up with somebody that he brought into the conversation from the science team as well, which analyzes like how the ISS can benefit from this ecosystem that we're building here, what tech is beneficial to space or to have in space or to innovate in space. And this is an individual who has had his hands on the actual science and built things all the way up to prototype stage, which is pretty dope. So we've got both business side of things and the practical science side of things covered with these two individuals that are coming into the Future Council, which is pretty much a non-official a culmination of industry or market or skill set specific experts that we have available for counsel and or advisement on the various companies that will be having go through our process, and it's just part of the ecosystem that we're building here. So it's pretty dope. Very excited for that. Yeah, we've got a bunch of people in that group. We should probably bring them on to have some conversations with us. Actually, that might be interesting.
That would be so interesting. I want to learn from them.
Yes. There's so much to learn. We're going to be constantly learning here, which is always exciting. Very cool. So that was the happening this morning, but there's a lot going on in Vegas right now for the Super Bowl week. There was a situation that was brought to our attention. So one of the companies that we're going to support through our venture studio, who is in esports and ed tech. Their name is Game Day. They're doing awesome stuff in the innovation of upskilling and reskilling with video games. They're going to be creating actual facilities and stadiums for esports, but also pairing that with creating like learning centers and innovation centers, which is really cool. So solid work there. And they're out in Vegas participating in some of the Super Bowl week events around esports. But a situation came up where they and we were able to step in and help facilitate. There was a sponsor that wasn't able to make it. And we've been trying to save a week's worth of events, and they've been doing an incredible job out there working with the city of Las Vegas. And I'll bring up the name of the other entity that they're working with out there. Main Street Bonds. And they partnered up with them, and through a relentless series of phone calls, they've been able to coordinate and pretty much save almost the entire week of events, which is pretty cool. And then the Saturday, they're going to have the co-inventor of cricket come down and do an activation for 150 high school students that are in like a collegiate training group or something like that, and kind of share this what the future looks like and what innovative technology looks like and what it takes to create and innovate in this world, this new state of the world, I should say. So that'll be pretty cool. That conversation for them, and also that they were able to do that. We're going to try to make it out there to maybe have a little bit of presence, but it's not something that's guaranteed. We were at least able to help with some of the phone calls and coordination, though. So happy we were able to do that. But yeah, Daniel, Game Day, super shout out to you. You've been doing awesome stuff. Keep it up. That's been a lot that's happening this week. And then earlier this week, we had a conversation with Space Foundation, somebody from Space Foundation, again, respecting the names, but they had built out the entrepreneurship and commerce arm, and they've got programs running through there. They're really interested in what we're doing here as well. And I think we're actually going to partner up with them on our upcoming aerospace accelerator that we're going to test out. And there's a bunch of other engagements that we're going to collaborate with them as well. And our whole goal with this, right? It's not like, hey, look at all the people we're talking to. It's a matter of the ecosystem we're trying to create so that innovative companies can come together and literally build the future together. It is what we're building here. Our first fund will be in deep tech and aerospace. So that's a primary focus for the venture studio specific and the idea generation specific companies and focus that we're going to have run through our studio, and the ventures that we'll be investing in a little bit more traditionally. Chris can share a bit about our progress there on the venture side of things, but we want to create an ecosystem where we're building the future together. So really, we're reaching out to these thought leaders, these innovators, these resources, these entities, and bringing people together all to the same table so that we can co-build the future. Because if we don't come together to build the future, then the future is just gonna look a lot like it does now. Maybe with shinier tech, maybe even a little worse off than it is, and it's gonna still be siloed. So we want to make sure to create a space that's conducive with a collaboratively created future, if that makes sense.
So, yeah, our venture is well underway, taking its first step into the wild and wonderful world of investments in VC-like entrepreneurship. So the venture studio aspect is a go, and we're going to be doing some interesting things by the next few episodes for sure, as we get all of our other processes in place. We would love to disclose names, but as viewers might quickly understand, if there's anything more frightening than investors, it's the IRS and the SEC. So we want to be incredibly mindful of that. But yeah, as Andrew was saying, the investments that we are making are going to be for the benefit of humanity as a whole. We are trying to push forward this notion that we are not doing technology for the sake of technology, and we want to only invest in companies, organizations, technologies that empower each other. And when we were having a discussion just earlier with National Lab Team, we were kind of going through what happens to the IP, or they were asked. We had a quick they had a quick question about IP rights, and I think Andrew and I, we've discussed before that we have to finally balance what the investment companies, the portfolio companies, the people providing funds are at helping build our fund will want, but we will also be pushing our overall mission and thesis in that ideally we would want to have looser reins on IP, if anything. Things that we produce or should be shared in more of a minimal model, like a free and open source, if possible.
Yep.
Right? There's still a lot of secret sauce and trade secrets that will come up. It's like giving away the recipe on paper to say Coca-Cola. You can have it, but you still don't really have the means to produce it, right? But the understanding is there for other people to hopefully innovate and create something interesting from it. So as we pursue our own internal developments, right? We're going to, especially our own internal developments. We'll be keeping an eye on how do we share this more openly with humanity as a whole, right? We don't want to be major gatekeepers that only empower and promote inequity in this world.
100%. Yeah, and that was something that we're even considering on what that might look like in our business model, right? So when we have to take larger equity stakes in companies to help build a paper napkin idea from nothing, what does that look like to let them sail off into new horizons themselves as their own entities, as opposed to like consistently being tethered to the venture studio in which they were birthed with. So yeah, we're exploring different things like that to make sure that, again, we're while we're not in this for the money, we know the money does need to make sense. So like the business and organizational structure will definitely be conducive to making sure that we're around for the decades to come, and that we set up an infrastructure that can support the creation of these companies at scale and at mass. We also want to do so in a fashion that it's not like we're creating a big umbrella company under which like we own all the future companies of the world either. Because it's not like we're in this for like that corporate overlord kind of what's the word that I'm looking for? The really
Big faceless conglomerate.
yeah, but
Monopoly.
what's the word for a dark foreseeing of the future, like a dark picture of the future?
Dystopian.
Thank you.
Yes.
Not looking to create a dystopian future. We definitely wanted to be harmonious. But
Yeah,
yes, all
we
the
don't
terms
need
that you
Blade
suggested
Runner.
to that.
Like
Yeah.
all the movies that display the future in that way. No.
Judge Dredd,
Continuum.
Blade Runner, Mad
Wall-E.
Max, Wall-E.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
But we are still being very much realists in terms of like where we sit
Yep.
on the table, and it's only after we can grow that we can more strongly push our own perspective and narrative to our investors. And so we're also being mindful that we're not jumping in with sharks who are only looking to make a buck. Yeah.
Yep. And that's the other consideration that's been really interesting. Carolina brought up a point about this last night when we were talking. Being very mindful of the individuals and the entities that we choose to collaborate with and we bring into this ecosystem. There needs to be alignment of values and goals, so it's conducive to creating a space where like the vibes that we get, like the Utah vibes, where everybody wants to help each other, and the person next to you, if you share what you're doing, there might be a handful of people they can introduce you to help you take that next step or fill that gap or address the pain that you're dealing with. So it's very much what we're creating here with Actuate Ventures.
I would love to get Carolina's and Nicole's perspective on what they envision our role is in the investment table, because often the conversations are so fast paced and we all have our own individual roles, and Andrew and I and Z have really been working the table. Like we're going out to a lot of events and such, but it doesn't mean Nicole and Carolina aren't. It just that we're just happen to be on the podcast and certain conversations. So it seems like we're leading these things, but everyone is playing their part. So
yeah,
I'm going to toss the popcorn to Carolina.
Thank you. Like for me, is I might not have expertise when it comes to space, but there's so much that I'm learning, and I think that's what really makes you be passionate about it. Like I'm passionate about learning everything, and I'm always curious about learning something new. So I'm coming with that perspective. Like whatever company I meet up with, like I'm interested. I just want to know what they're doing. Why are they doing it? That's always a question that I ask. Like, why are you doing this? Because that helps me differentiate the people that are really passionate about what they're doing versus, oh, I'm just doing this because someone gave me this idea and it's going to make me money, or any other reasons that they might have. But it's really interesting to see you guys operate at a higher level, in my opinion, when you do have the expertise, and it's easier for you to discern if it's a company that you really want to invest in, or if it's like maybe a no for now but maybe a yes in the future. um but it's I feel like you guys have an easier filter to be like yes, 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 no, no, no. And maybe that might be my perception, and correct me if I'm wrong. But I think I want to get to that level. I want to be able to identify things faster without having to go through the whole thing. And I think it's okay for me to go through the whole process because I'm learning now. And the more you do it, the faster and easier it's going to get to you, right? So, yeah, that's my take on it.
You might be able to hear my friend in the background because I am staying with a friend for the rest of the week. But yes, retweet to what Carolina just said. I feel the same way. I feel like right now I'm in this position where I'm trying to elevate like our voice. And through that with design and building like our brand and stuff. So it's interesting for me to like come through and hear everything that's going on and then figure out how I could bring that to like a visual standpoint, and then also like promote us on social media. So I think right now like that's like my role in trying to help build off on top of what you guys are already doing. And then for me as well, I think that my next initiative is because I want to continue to learn about this space as well, because my jam has just been like getting startups off the ground and bringing them from 0 to 1 and then setting them up for 1 to 10. So I'm excited for like as the contracts come through, as they are starting to, which is crazy insane. We've been working on this for so long and like now it's all coming to fruition. How my strengths will come into play here within this space, and learning more about how like insanely connected it is with like aerospace and deep tech is so intricate. And I'm taking the initiative now. I started with watching all the sci-fi movies.
Perfect.
To see how, because you know, a lot of tech is inspired by, like not all of it, but there is parallels to see like what people are exposed to, and like they have like this vision of what it could look like, and how like even when I see like the Vision Pros coming out that Apple just put out, like they're inspired by like these movies. And because it's interesting because people are more, you know, there's, I don't know if it's the debate between the willingness to people to adopt new technology because that's what they're used to seeing, or if it's just, you know, people watch the movies that were designing it and we're like, oh my gosh, let's get inspired by this. But I think that it's all interesting and great. And yeah, I'm excited to learn more as well. So that's how I feel like I'm showing up right now. And only up leveling from here.
Yeah, for sure. Chris has actually spoken to this, so it's really interesting when you think about like the forecasting of the future that we get through creative expression, through movies and shows and novels and things like that. And some of it contributes to what that actually looks like. But then there's also this really interesting dynamic that we can only conceive so much from our current perspective. So Chris had an interesting example with the, and I know Nicole, you got to hop off in a minute as well. So yeah, excited to be co-building with you and obviously with Caroline as well. And honestly, you guys see us as the experts, and we might have some expertise, but we are very much still learning in the space as well. It's very, very conducive environment to learning through doing. So happy to be building this together.
Yeah. All right, I gotta hop off, but I'll listen back to this. All right. Bye-bye.
And just to bridge what I was getting into, so Chris shared this interesting perspective in regards to how the future was portrayed in the past. And it was, what was the example that you gave of the person? It was like an interplanetary thing, but it had to do with the communications.
So what you'll often find in sci-fi or any type of futurism is we rarely ever actually predict or portray a future which is uncomfortable to our present. We are taking our present and taking it to an extreme. That is most of the stories you'll find in sci-fi. Very rarely will you find something actually more grandiose in terms of changing society and its norms. And as such, you'll just get better versions of technology, which is literally the thesis against what we're doing. And what the example I spoke to with Andrew is a sci-fi novel, I believe, from the 40s or 50s, right at the start of kind of the this era of unknown space exploration, when we were still debating whether or not there was some type of air in space called ether, or we had no idea what it was like on other planetary bodies. And as such, this particular novel, and I don't remember the name. I've actually tried looking and I can't find it, but I remember reading it. An individual has to go work on one of the moons of Jupiter. And in this future, travel is easy and communication is instant. So there's a means of communication which is faster than light. And the individual on one of the moons of Jupiter wanted to call his mother home on Earth. And when he picks up the phone and he goes, "Operator, I would like to call my mother and her name." Now, for the youngins listening today or in the future, there was a time before phone numbers, and that time actually was not that long ago. Technology moves that quickly, and as such, operators, telecom operator was a fact of life. It was a career that you could have gone into and retired with. It was such a normal aspect of taking phone calls that this author, whether or not they could imagine or chose to write in a way which was familiar to audiences, there was an operator for this instant communication system still far into the future, right? And today, operators are dead. It is not a thing that people born or even many people alive that grew up with them remember. We have this thing that I came across called social renormalization, where it only takes, and it's not a theory, it's just a hypothesis, it's not tested, it's just a concept, social psychological concept, where it takes about 8 years for people to forget parts of their productive past. So we often question the validity of a thing that we use if it's reintroduced into our norm. So, for instance, flip phones were a thing for a long time. Hinge devices were a thing for a long time. And suddenly, when folding phones were reintroduced, you saw conversations about how long will the hinge last? This is a thing that we have perfected for decades before anyone on this call had existed. And we had hundreds of millions of flip phones, functional hinges for years and years. These are not conversations we actually need to have. Now they can be improved, like there's legitimate engineering to improve and make them better. Today's hinges are better than they were in the early 2000s, but it was not a question of like, will this even work? Right?
Yeah.
911. There are people I've met that grew up without 911, and they think when you ask them what was like, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I didn't have 911 growing up." 911 wasn't ubiquitous until the 90s, the late 80s and 90s. Um, that's why there was such a strong education campaign in the 90s with dating myself, McGruff and 911 and all this other stuff. So we couldn't imagine a future without telephone operators. We couldn't imagine a future, and other sci-fi I've gone into, without so many other aspects. The Milkman. I've seen things about where like people have predicted the future, and like it's just like the Milkman with drones, and you're like, or we stop drinking milk. No one imagined that,
Yeah.
right? No one imagined that we could just maybe produce milk artificially in our own homes. No one is asking what is the most uncomfortable thing with our technological future. Those are the questions that we really want to get into, and those are the type of aspects within our ethos, our working model for Actuate Ventures that we're really trying to hone in on. And when we find companies that push us to be uncomfortable, those are the gems that we're truly looking for. That's where we're headed. Where I hope we're headed.
Yeah, I'd say so. Very cool. Well, I know this was kind of like a modular episode this time. We had a couple of new people pop in, and some people pop in and pop out. Yeah. But we're just here to document our journey. So if you have any questions or any insight that you've gotten from these, feel free to engage with them in all the places that we post this as well. We'd love for this to be more of a conversation than a one-way channel. What are some things that we learned, I guess, just to wrap up, what are some things that we learned that we can actuate in the coming week? I've got one thing. There has been, as we scale, we're currently shifting all of our systems over, all of our accounts over. It is painful. And now that we have like 10 people involved in this, where everybody's kind of doing a different function within the business, there's a lot of dynamism and multiple people going through this pain in different ways. One of those things for me is not really, I've allowed myself not to have a centralized place for tasking. So because it's been pretty fluid, you come up with something that needs to be done, note it down, get it done, and then move on to the next thing. But now there's so much to do. I have like these random floating notes to self and like different conversations, and I'm not even keeping Post-its anymore. And I just realized I've been meaning to reach out to legal with a very simple question over the past 2 days, and have not gotten that out yet. So one thing that I'm going to take with me is as things scale, making sure that the systems and rituals that are conducive to executing are consistently in place, so that things don't fall through the cracks like they have been. So I'm going to make it a point to get our Notion up and running. Shout out to Notion, we love you. Sponsor our podcast, we love you. Just kidding, but we do use you all the time. We do use Notion all the time. Getting a place just where all of us can jot down and self-manage our task lists, so we all have that centralized place. That's my actuation item for the week.
For me, I would say it's okay to say no to meetings. It's okay. You don't have to be everywhere all the time. So, and it's okay just to say no to companies too. Like, you don't have to give a yes or like, oh, maybe in the future or something like that. I think it saves time to everyone, and also there's no lingering hopes because it's not good to be on that side that it's like, oh, what if, or maybe, like you're just hoping for it. So
On to wrap up with, my actuation is to do more to support others along this operational journey. Uh, we have been in such a company building mode for the last, I don't know how long now, that um, getting back into the nitty gritty, dirty aspects, such as this migration, has felt a little uncomfortable. Where you're like, oh, can I put this off a little bit longer? Or um, oh, we gotta write an SOW, or and you're going like, okay, we gotta just hit these brass tacks items
Yep.
right away. Um, Otherwise, they just keep piling up. So probably for the next week, my goal, or the next few weeks, is whenever there is a more immediate task, I will just do it, with the exception of um, things that can be more productively done the next day, and uh, administrative tasks that take away from building tasks. So my general advice is leave random administration to the very end of the day and focus first and foremost on productive business aspects. But if you don't have a productive business aspect, go take care of your admin thing.
Love it. Love it. All right, Chris, take us home.
We'll be here again the next time around. Everyone have a lovely day, month, year, and life. Take care and be well.
Cheers, y'all.